All right, so today we're going deep into hospice care,
Okay.
and we're going to be looking at it through the experience of a daughter
Hmm.
whose mother is going through a terminal illness.
Okay.
And the source material that we're using for this deep dive is Embracing Endings: A Daughter's Journey with Hospice.
Interesting.
And I think this is going to be a really fascinating look
Yeah.
at, kind of the emotions and the practicalities of an
Hmm.
experience that I think a lot of people maybe have some misunderstandings about.
Yeah, for sure.
So have you ever thought
Or
about
helper.
what hospice really is?
Yeah.
It's more than just medical care, right?
Yeah.
It's
Totally
about
fair enough.
comfort and dignity
Mm.
and really making the most of
Yeah,
the last part of life.
exactly. It's about shifting that focus, from
Yeah.
fighting death to really embracing life's natural course.
Right, yeah. Okay, so the story starts with the mother, Eleanor, receiving a stage 4 cervical cancer diagnosis. And the author doesn't just tell us about this, you know? She
Wow.
really puts us right there in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you really feel the weight of the news
Hmm.
and that feeling of the future kind of slipping away.
Yeah.
And what really stood out to me was the daughter, Sarah's reaction.
Okay.
Almost like she refused to accept it,
Yeah.
desperately looking for any other treatment.
Right.
It's very powerful.
That's such a human response, though.
Yeah.
Like denial and just that urge to cling to hope.
Right.
I mean, those are incredibly strong,
Yeah.
especially when you're faced with potentially losing someone you love.
Right.
So Sarah's initial resistance to hospice
Mm.
makes complete sense, I think, in that context.
Yeah.
She sees it as giving up,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like a betrayal of her love for her mom.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, though, because the book also gives us Eleanor's perspective.
Okay.
Like, she's tired.
Mm-hmm.
She's exhausted from years of battling illnesses, and she doesn't want to go through aggressive treatments
Yeah.
that might just prolong her suffering.
That's tough.
She just wants a peaceful and comfortable end.
I see.
And her acceptance of her situation, I think that's key here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It highlights something that's really important about hospice care.
All right.
It's about respecting the patient's wishes
Yeah.
and their autonomy,
Mhm.
Hospice isn't about forcing anything on anybody.
Right.
It's about empowering people to make their own choices
Exactly.
about their end-of-life experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point.
And there's this really, really powerful scene
Okay.
where Eleanor, she has to use all her strength to pull Sarah close, and she just whispers, "I'm tired."
Oh, gosh.
And it's heartbreaking, but it's also an act of love.
Mhm.
It's like she's giving Sarah permission
Yeah.
to let go of the fight
To let go, yeah.
and to just cherish the time they have left.
Yeah, that's a difficult conversation.
I can
Yeah,
imagine.
for both of them.
Right.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to how important it is to
Yeah.
have open communication,
Yeah.
between the patient, the family,
Yeah.
and the healthcare provider.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the kindest thing you can do
Yeah.
is to shift from seeking a cure
Right.
to just focusing on comfort
Yeah.
and quality of life.
Yeah. And that's a tough shift.
Yeah,
Sarah really struggles with it at first,
of course.
but she eventually makes that really difficult decision to contact hospice care. And this is where the book starts to challenge some of the common misconceptions,
Okay.
about what hospice is. It paints this picture of hospice as not a place of giving up,
Right.
but as a specialized form of care
Mhm.
that's focused on comfort, pain management, and emotional support.
Yeah, it's important to remember that hospice care involves a whole team of professionals.
Yeah.
It's nurses, it's doctors,
Mm.
social workers, counselors, even chaplains sometimes. And they all work together to create a personalized care plan
Yeah.
that's not just about the patient's physical needs,
All right.
but also their emotional and spiritual well-being.
So we see this team arrive, and the author describes them as a soothing balm.
Wow.
So it seems like their compassion and their expertise just immediately put Sarah at ease.
Right.
So, in your experience, how do hospice teams provide that kind of comfort and support?
Well, it can be, practical things like managing pain and symptoms
Yeah.
or making sure the environment is peaceful and comfortable. It could be helping with bathing or dressing,
Okay.
or sometimes even just being there to listen.
Mm-hmm.
The main goal is always
Yeah.
easing suffering and improving their quality of life,
Right.
whatever that looks like for each person.
Yeah, and how do they handle, like, the emotional and spiritual side of care?
Yeah.
Because this has got to be just an incredibly difficult time
Oh,
for
absolutely.
everyone involved.
Yeah. Hospice teams often include counselors or social workers
Yeah.
who are specifically trained to help patients and families
Mm.
work through all those feelings about
Right.
death and dying.
Yeah.
And they might help them talk about their fears or
Mm.
regrets or
Mm.
things they wish they had done differently.
Wow.
Some hospices even have chaplains or spiritual advisors,
Okay.
to offer support to those who find comfort in their faith.
So it's really about more than just the medical treatment.
So much
It's
more.
about looking at the whole person,
Right.
their physical, emotional, and spiritual needs, and
Yeah.
supporting them through this final stage of life.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that dying is a natural part of life
Hmm.
and offering care that respects the person's dignity and choices.
Okay, so we've seen that initial shock of the diagnosis,
Right.
Sarah's initial resistance,
Mm-hmm.
and that really powerful conversation that shifts her perspective. We've also started to see what the hospice team does and the specialized care they provide.
So much more to come.
Right.
Yeah, as we move into part 2,
Okay.
we're going to explore how this care impacts both Eleanor and Sarah.
Okay.
And we'll look at those moments of peace
Yeah.
and how their bond deepens
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately Eleanor's passing.
Okay, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Me too.
As we go on with embracing endings,
Mhm.
it's like really interesting to see how the whole atmosphere changes when the hospice team arrives.
Okay.
It's like the book itself takes a deep breath
Right.
and finds this like gentle pace.
Yeah.
The focus isn't on fighting the disease anymore. It's more about creating those peaceful moments for Eleanor.
That shift is so important.
Yeah.
And the author does a great job of showing us how it happens,
Yeah.
like in those small things,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
adjusting her pillows, giving her a hand massage,
Yeah.
or just sitting and listening to her stories.
Right.
It's about just being with her,
Yeah.
not just treating her illness.
There's this one part where Eleanor, who had been in so much pain,
Mhm.
is described as finding these moments of peace.
Wow.
It's almost like her spirit comes back to life.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your work with hospice,
Mm-hmm.
have you seen that?
Yeah.
Like people rediscovering joy in those simple things when they're not focused on the treatments anymore.
When the focus changes from aggressive treatments to comfort care,
Right.
it often gives patients a chance to reconnect with things that bring them joy.
Like what kind of things?
It could be listening to their favorite music,
Mm-hmm.
being outside, or just being with their loved ones
Yeah.
without the stress of hospital visits and all those procedures.
Right. Yeah. And it's in these moments that we see Sarah's perspective on hospice start to change, right?
Okay.
At first, she thought it was giving up,
Yeah.
but now she's starting to understand it's something completely different.
She begins to see that hospice is about embracing the present moment, about making each day matter,
Yeah.
however long they have left.
Right.
It's not about rushing towards death.
Right.
It's about making sure that last part of her mom's life
Yeah.
is filled with dignity and comfort.
And that change allows Sarah to let go of that need to find a cure and
Yeah.
just be there with her mom.
Yeah.
The book talks about how their bond deepens during this time.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about memories. They laugh together.
That's beautiful.
They really cherish each other. It's like
Mhm.
accepting death, in a way, allows them to fully embrace life.
That's such a great point. And
Yeah.
it's something that often gets lost in our fear of death.
Right.
Accepting that we're all going to die
Yeah.
can actually make us more present and appreciative of the life we have right now.
Right.
It helps us focus on what truly matters.
Right.
Things like connection, love, and sharing those special moments.
The author even calls the hospice environment a sanctuary.
I love
It's not a place of defeat anymore. It's a safe space where Eleanor can find peace.
Yeah.
And Sarah can find comfort knowing she's honoring her mom's wishes.
That word sanctuary is so fitting
Yeah.
because hospice care is all about creating a space
Yeah.
that's free from the stress and worry of all those medical interventions. A space where patients and their families can simply be together, work through their feelings, and
Yeah.
find comfort in each other.
And it's in this sanctuary that Eleanor peacefully passes away.
Mm-hmm.
The book doesn't hide the sadness of that moment, but
Right.
there's this overwhelming feeling of acceptance.
Yeah.
It feels like Sarah finds closure knowing she fulfilled her mother's final wishes.
That feeling of closure is so important for both the patient and their loved ones.
Hmm.
Knowing that they went through this difficult journey together,
Yeah.
supporting each other all the way,
Mm-hmm.
can bring a sense of peace
Mm-hmm.
and even gratitude amidst the grief.
So we've seen the impact of hospice care on both Eleanor and Sarah.
Yeah.
We've seen how their perspectives changed and how their bond grew stronger.
Absolutely.
And we've seen how accepting death can, in a way, make life feel more precious.
Yeah.
But what about the impact that stays with Sarah?
Right.
What happens after the book ends?
Yeah, in part 3, we're going to look at how Sarah carries the lessons from this experience with her
Okay.
and what embracing endings teaches us about end-of-life care as a society.
So we've really gone deep with Sarah through this story and
Yeah.
seen how hospice care really changed things for her and her mom.
It's powerful.
But as we finish up our deep dive, I'm curious
Yeah.
about what happens next,
Hmm.
like after the book ends, you know?
Right.
What stays with Sarah?
Well, one thing that really sticks out is the peace Sarah finds.
Okay.
I mean, she's grieving, of course,
Yeah.
but there's also this deep sense of gratitude
Mm-hmm.
for the time they had and for being able to make Eleanor comfortable.
It's almost like her initial reluctance towards hospice
Right.
made her appreciate it even more in the end.
Yeah, I see that.
Like by struggling with the idea of letting go,
Mhm.
she could fully grasp what hospice really offered.
It shows us that everyone's experience with hospice is different.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong way to feel.
Yeah.
And sometimes those tough feelings lead to the most powerful lessons.
The book doesn't shy away from the tough stuff about grief,
Yeah.
but it also emphasizes finding meaning in loss.
It's about growth.
It seems like going through this really changed how Sarah thought about death and dying.
Absolutely. Embracing endings makes us rethink how we, as a society, approach end-of-life care.
Mm.
Sarah's story shows how important open communication is,
Yeah.
respecting what people want, and focusing on quality of life
Mm-hmm.
instead of just chasing a cure.
It makes you face your own mortality, doesn't it?
For sure.
It makes you think about what really matters and how
Yeah.
you want to spend your final days.
It encourages us to have those hard conversations with our loved ones,
Right.
to say what we want and look into the options so we can face the end of life with more awareness
Right.
and
Yeah.
purpose.
It makes you think about hospice's place in our healthcare system.
Mhm.
There's still a lot of misconceptions about it.
Unfortunately, yes, a lot of people think it's giving up
Yeah.
or only a last resort.
Right.
But Sarah's story shows it's about a different kind of care,
Mm-hmm.
one that prioritizes comfort, dignity,
Yeah.
and the well-being of the patient and their family.
It's about accepting the natural course of life, isn't it?
Exactly, shifting from fighting death
Yeah.
to embracing the journey.
That's a powerful takeaway.
It really is.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into embracing endings,
Mhm.
what would you leave our listeners with?
I would say think about your own beliefs about death.
Mm-hmm.
What does a good death mean to you?
Okay.
What's important to you in end-of-life care?
Yeah.
And how can we as individuals and as a society
Mm-hmm.
create a more supportive and compassionate environment
Yeah.
for those facing these inevitable transitions?
Those are some deep questions to consider.
They are.
Maybe Sarah's story can be a starting point for those conversations,
Yeah.
inspiring us to face endings not with fear,
Right.
but with grace, dignity,
Yeah.
and a deeper understanding of what it means to really live.
Beautifully said.
Well, that was a really insightful discussion. I really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.